James Crowther is noteworthy because he is the highest ranking officer in this cemetery. Fredericksburg is very much a soldier cemetery. It's not a cemetery that's filled with generals and high-ranking officers. In fact, there are no generals here at the cemetery. The only general we have is the guy standing on that pedestal over there, and he's made of bronze. Everybody else here is a colonel or lower. And there's not even many people who are colonels, majors, or lieutenant colonels. There's only 8 field officers, as they're called, here at this cemetery. Everybody else of the 15,300 soldiers who's buried here is either a captain or below. So it's very much, again, a cemetery for the average Joe soldier. The vast majority, of course, came from the Civil War. In fact, that's why this cemetery was created. It was created to do something with all the remains of these thousands of soldiers who were scattered around this area in an immediate wake of the Civil War. So they created this cemetery, sent out crews over a 3-year time period to bring in the remains of 15,000 plus soldiers and buried them here on this hillside. At that point, they actually had wooden headboards for the soldiers. Can anybody think what a problem would be with having wooden headboards? Well, not so much termites, but just basic rot. Wood lasts, 5, 6, 7 years if you're lucky out in the elements. If it's not treated, and of course they didn't have treated wood at that time. So all these headboards started to rot. So the Army had to make a decision in the 1870s. Do you replace it with more headboards that are also going to rot, or do you put in more permanent headstones, which cost a lot more? In this case, the Army did the correct thing. It bit the bullet, paid the extra expense, and put in this case, granite headstones. So these were put in again in the 1870s. They were, at that time, they were basically 2 types of headstones. One for the known soldiers, like this, which had their name, a rank, if they had a rank, and a state, and the smaller ones for the unknown soldiers. Let me ask you, what percentage of the soldiers in the cemetery do you think are unknown?
A lot. 12,000.
I heard some people say about 85% are unknown. So 8.5 soldiers out of every 10, by the time they dug them up, had no identification on them. So again, the vast majority of soldiers are not buried in headstones like this, but are buried under headstones like this. Now, if you go and count them today, you'll find the number of headstones of this sort are just about the same as this. How do you explain that? What's that? Well, identify them, but why are the unidentified dead outnumber the known dead by 6 or 7 to 1, and yet the number of headstones is the same?
Because
multiple graves, exactly. If you take a look at these small ones, it has 2 numbers on it. That's the plot number, and underneath is a single digit, usually single digit, identifying how many soldiers are in that single plot, and it can go from 1 all the way up to 12 in some cases. So as you look around, you see all these headstones. Well, that's a lot of soldiers. Keep in mind that most of these stones have a lot more than 1 soldier in them, so it's even a lot more than would appear to the naked eye. One thing you find is interesting is that the headstones that you see here are all the same. There's no differentiation depending on who you were. A colonel got the same as a private. A black soldier got the same as a white soldier. Later, when women were added here, women had the same headstones as men. So everybody kind of got the same government-issued headstones. The only different headstones are the ones that were privately funded by the families, and there are only about 20 of those here in this cemetery. So most of the ones here are government-issued headstones. But again, they're all pretty much the same, with one exception. Anybody think of what the exception might be? No, because Confederates were not allowed to be buried here. A couple slipped in just by mistake, clerical mistakes. But Confederates had to fund their own cemeteries after the war. This is all Union.
Oh, okay.
So anybody think what soldiers would have different sort of headstones?
Higher ranking?
No.
Medal of Honor?
The Medal of Honor winners. Medal of Honor winners, not initially, but in later decades, they started marking the Medal of Honor winners with different types of headstones than the average soldier. We have 2 Medal of Honor winners here, one down at the foot of the hill, near where the big monument is, and the other one where those folks are standing there with a bright white lantern on top of it. That fellow is named William Jones. He was a sergeant in the 73rd New York. He won his Medal of Honor for capturing a Confederate flag at the Battle of the Bloody Angle. He took the flag to the rear, turned it over to the proper authorities, went back into the battle and was killed. and about 5 or 6 months later, he was awarded the Medal of Honor for his actions there. Again, he probably had the same sort of headstone as everybody else initially, but in later decades, the Army came in and put a somewhat nicer one there because he was a Medal of Honor winner. But other than that, everybody's headstone, with the exception of the privately funded ones, are all standard military issue, no differentiation because of rank or who you were.